Coronet, you she-devil! We're not ready to tackle the heavy stuff yet, so let's start with something small, like how to behave in the lunchroom. That makes a ton of sense. College of Education, that's like the equivalent of calling a store a place of shopping.
Just before lunch one day, a puppet show was put on at school.
Life hasn't been the same for Jeff Dunham.
Mr. Bungle Goes to Lunch. It was fun to watch.
We're having fun.
In the
Alright, just gonna make sure Chris Hansen is
Mr.
nowhere
Bungle
around.
came to the boys' room on his way to lunch. He looked at his hands. His hands were dirty. And his hair
A nice
was
look at
messy.
Macaulay Culkin post-1994.
But Mr. Bungle didn't stop to wash his hands or comb his hair.
Who
He
combs
went
their
right
hair in
to
school?
lunch.
Those kids weren't laughing at the puppet show, somebody just farted.
Then, instead of getting into line at the lunchroom,
Okay, Mr. Bungle is a Mitch. He's
pushed
on his way to
everyone
talk to the
aside
manager.
and went right to the front. Even though this made the children laugh, no one thought that was a fair thing to do.
Well, those kids are certainly doing a good job of hiding it.
Then,
So there
in
once
the
was this
lunchroom,
man from
Mr.
Nantucket.
Bungle was so clumsy and impolite that he knocked over everything, and no one wanted to sit next to him. And when he finally
This
knocked
reminds me
his
of my
own tray
ex-wife!
off the table, that was the end of the puppet show. The children knew that even though Mr. Bungle was funny to watch, he wouldn't be much fun to eat with. Phil
Yeah,
knew
fake
that a
applause.
Mr.
Look at my
Bungle
hand
wouldn't
not
have
even
many
coming close to
friends.
my other hand.
He wouldn't want to be like Mr. Bungle. Later, Miss Brown said it was time for the children who ate in the cafeteria to go to lunch.
Everybody else, go
She
eat your
hoped
lunch
there
in the
weren't
back of the
any
dumpster
Mr.
behind the
Bungles in
school.
this room.
Apparently everybody took a vow of silence.
Phil stopped to return a book to Miss Brown while his friends went on to the lunchroom.
Can't wait for that to
He
come
would
back
have
into
to catch
play
up with
later.
them later.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't come back later.
On his way to catch up with his friends, Phil almost walked past the boys' room, but he stopped and thought. Were his hands clean? No, they were a little dirty.
And apparently he got a
Phil
paper
remembered
cut on the
that
one
Mr.
hand.
Bungle didn't wash his hands. Mr. Bungle's hair was messy, too. Phil didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle.
Ah, shit, I wanted to the girls'
Inside the
bathroom.
boys'
Anyway,
room, Phil was surprised to see some of his friends washing their hands, too. Phil washed his hands well, with lots of soap.
God, even people with OCD will tell you, slow down on the soap, dude.
Then he rinsed the soap off. Phil dried his hands well, too.
Phil then did
When he was
this.
finished,
Phil then
he
did
threw
that.
the paper towel in the basket where it belonged. And then he made sure that his hair looked neat.
You know, Charlie Bond and Doug Funny combined had more hair than this kid does.
Now, Phil and his friends were ready for lunch.
We are two wild and crazy guys. Well, screw you too, Jimmy.
There was a line of children waiting to get into the lunchroom when
Apple's
Phil
about
got
to
there.
unveil their new iPhone.
He saw some boys he
Yeah,
knew
boy.
at the front of the line. They waved for him to go up to the front with them. But Phil didn't want to break into line as Mr.
There's
Bungle
literally
did.
a cop standing right there.
So Phil went to the end. That was the
I
fair
like
thing to do.
lunch. Go away,
He would
I'm,
see his
I'm
other
thinking.
friends inside the lunchroom. The line moved very fast, and soon Phil was inside. First he picked up his tray.
Dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air.
Then he got his silverware.
This isn't really that thrilling of a story, dude.
He put his knife, fork, and spoon neatly on the tray. And then he slid his tray along.
Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot.
He always enjoyed looking at the good food in the cafeteria. It tasted good, and was good for him, too.
That's what they want you to believe.
Instead of having a sandwich today, Phil decided to take the hot lunch.
Jesus, whoa, that's hot!
Phil took some bread and butter, too.
There was no toast
and
and
he knew what else he
jam.
wanted. Milk. But Alice took the last carton
You
on the tray.
bitch!
Maybe there was more milk. So he said, "May I please have some
Hold
milk?"
on, I gotta go get it from the cows out there.
Phil
Give me a
remembered
minute.
to say, "May I?" and "please." That was very polite.
Yep,
Yes,
old
there
Bessie
was more
really
milk.
came through this time.
Phil remembered to say, "Thank you," when he took the carton of milk.
Yeah, thank
Phil
you too.
had
Next,
good
please.
manners. He didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle in the lunchroom.
Why did you say that name?
Phil didn't want to forget his dessert. The cake
Damn,
looked
that's like a
delicious.
meal on its own. Holy crap.
At the end of the line, the lunchroom supervisor said she had noticed how polite Phil was.
They said to
and she
acknowledge that
smiled
or I
at him.
don't get paid.
She wouldn't smile at a Mr. Bungle.
Because Mr. Bungle spit in
Phil
her
went
face.
to the table
A
where his
lot.
friends were. He put his tray down carefully, pulled out his chair quietly, and sat down. He knew his friends wouldn't like a noisy Mr. Bungle at their table.
How are you supposed to move a chair
There
quietly?
was someone Phil liked, Freddie. He always brought his lunch from home. It looked good. Freddie
Phil also
a
had pictures of
sandwich,
Freddie all
an
throughout his
apple,
room.
a cookie, and milk.
Freddie was clearly living in poverty.
Before Phil began to eat, he always put a napkin on his lap. So did Freddie. Everyone liked Freddie.
Freddie knew
He
where to
was
find the
very
best
polite.
drugs.
For example, if he had food in his mouth when someone talked to him, he always took time to chew the food with his mouth closed and swallow before he answered. Phil noticed how straight and tall Freddie usually sat.
If he sat any other way, he'd
Freddie
probably
kept
be
his feet
considered
on
gay.
the floor, too.
Those shoes aren't looking too clean. You're really Mr.
Phil
Bungle,
would
aren't
rather
you?
be like Freddie than like Mr. Bungle. Another polite person everyone liked was Alice. For example, when Alice sneezed, she covered her mouth and nose.
But she put it back on
This
her lap,
protected
though.
her friends at the table from any germs.
But the napkin with her germs is still
While
on her.
Phil and his friends ate, a boy ran past their table. You shouldn't run in the lunchroom.
All right,
Only
but if I
Mr.
start
Bungle
pooping on the
would do
floors, I
that.
ain't cleaning that shit up.
Phil and his friends wouldn't like to have a Mr. Bungle at their table. Then
6 kids
lunchtime
there. Ain't
wouldn't
no
be
way
as
that
much
table
fun
is
as it
looking
is.
clean after they're done.
Phil ate slowly and enjoyed his lunch. Finally, he had eaten everything except his dessert.
The cake actually shrunk since
He
we last
saved
saw
his
it. The
cake
cake
for
is a
last.
lie.
Only a Mr. Bungle would eat his dessert before he had finished the rest of his lunch.
Can you let me live,
And
Mr.
Phil
Narrator?
wasn't a
God!
Mr. Bungle. The cake was good.
Meanwhile, that kid is scratching for lice.
Phil drank his milk carefully. Some children are messy when they drink milk.
That straw can
Not
barely
Phil.
hold onto the carton.
As each of Phil's friends finished, they didn't leave the table, but waited for all the others to finish eating too. Phil was the last one done.
He finished at 3
Wiped his
o'clock.
mouth
Time for
and
everybody to
hands
go home.
carefully
School's
with his
over.
napkin. Then he cleaned the table where he sat. He didn't want to leave his place at the table dirty. Everyone at the table cleaned his own place well. But look at that table. It was left very messy.
Yeah, it turns out nobody bothered to clean that up from
Phil
yesterday.
thought a Mr. Bungle must have sat there. But Phil didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle.
As he's about to sneak
So
into
he
Phil's
put his
school with an
chair neatly in
AK-47.
place. And his table looked fine.
1959 fine,
Not
but
a
still
piece of
fine.
paper or scrap of food was left on it.
The chairs, on the other hand, were another story.
No Mr. Bungle sat here.
He actually died on that table 5 years ago today.
Phil's friends were careful to put their waste papers and empty milk cartons where they belonged.
Gotta have those
In
cartons
this
refilled
way,
for
they
tomorrow's
helped
lunch.
keep the lunchroom clean. Phil was certain that Mr. Bungle wouldn't put his paper in the waste
He'd just
basket
go ahead and
his
shit in
empty
it.
carton on the milk tray. Mr. Bungle probably wouldn't bother to put his lunch tray in the right place either.
He'd just throw
But
it in there
Phil
and piss
his
in the
friends
sink.
Did. Lunch was good today.
The one day of the
And
year
then
it was
Miss
good.
Brown told Phil and his friends how proud she was of them.
This
They
was
had
all a
left their
ruse. You're
tables
all
the
on
neatest
candid
in the
camera.
lunchroom.
There's a camera, there's a camera,
No
there's a
one here
camera.
was a Mr. Bungle, and no one wanted to be. Are you like Mr. Bungle? Mr. Bungle is a shame because he spoils lunchtime. Don't be like Mr. Bungle. Have good lunchtime manners, and lunch will be more fun for everyone.
Oh yeah, Mr. Narrator? Well, guess what? I'm gonna go have my own lunchroom with blackjack and hookers. You know what? Forget the lunchroom with the blackjack. Screw the whole thing.